Welcome back to So You Really Want to Learn Latin, and today we are going to give some final advice for this course on unseen translation technique. Okay, now this comes at the very end of chapter 10 of book 3 of the course. It's an emotional day in many ways because we have got to the end of the course. There's a load more to learn, of course. You never stop learning Latin. But just for now, we're going to finish this series of videos by looking at how to approach a slab of Latin which appears to be slightly harder than you wish it to be. Okay. Now this advice comes from the guru, the hero, the legend that was Theo Zinn. Formerly head of classics at Westminster. I was lucky enough to be taught by him in later life, if you see what I mean, after he'd retired. And I spent 3 years sitting at the feet of a legend. And he taught me, well, he retaught me Latin, and pretty much everything I know comes from Theo. He was amazing. May he rest in peace. But this was his advice on how to tackle unseen Latin translation, particularly in an exam situation, but of course it applies, wherever you are and whatever you're doing. Absolutely, the first thing, don't panic. Second thing, don't even think about picking up a pencil and starting to write a translation of a slab of Latin until you've read it through at least 3 times. Now, we're all so impatient. We all want to just get on with stuff, and to read something through 3 times before you actually start translating it sounds utter madness. But it makes the most enormous difference if you can be disciplined enough to do it. Now this particularly applies if you've got a slab of Latin and you look at it and you think, oh my goodness, what is going on here? Because what actually happens, it's a little bit like reading a difficult English poem, where at first it just doesn't really seem to make any sense. The same applies with a foreign language. So if you read the passage through, on the first reading, really all you're trying to do is establish for the benefit of any doubt that you might have had, that it is in fact Latin. Okay? And, sometimes it kind of looks so difficult and so peculiar that you just think, I'm never going to get this. But if you just read it through, word by word, by word by word, very quickly you settle down and you realise that actually most of the words are indeed Latin words, not kind of Serbo-Croat or something. And therefore, even though you don't know what it means, you do recognise it as being the language you have been studying. And that, in a sense, is reassuring. Okay? So just read it through and check that this is in fact Latin. Second time, read it through again. This time just paying a little bit of attention to the word endings and checking that, some of these words are words you actually know. You've got the vocabulary sorted. You know what they mean, just in terms of the vocabulary of the words. Just a little look at the endings. You see some accusative plurals or some genitive plurals or, the kind of easily recognisable forms. Third person singular verb endings, bat or, bit or that kind of thing. That's a reassuring thing. And then the third time, read it through again, this time just piecing together little bits of it as you go. Now, what you will find by doing this is that after that third reading, you may not know what the passage means, but you'll know what it's about. You'll know whether you've come across words that mean ambassador and, soldier and king and whatever, or whether you're coming across words, talking about villas and dinner parties and wine and food and tables and slave girls and, feasts, that kind of thing. You'll know roughly what the story is about, okay? And then and only then do you actually get into this first sentence and try to translate it properly. And if you approach Latin in that way, in that sort of patient, disciplined way, sitting on your hands, don't pick up a pen or a pencil and start writing until you've read it through 3 times, I absolutely guarantee that what you end up with as your translation will be hundreds of times better than it would have been if you had just looked at the first sentence and said, yep, I know what this means, and crack into it. Okay, works every time. Now, we're going to do exactly that on a lovely slab of Latin we've got here. It's on page 109. It's all about Augustus Caesar. Julius Caesar, dear old chap, has been murdered, 44 BC, and the Roman world is in turmoil. Who's going to take over the mantle of Julius Caesar? And as history will relate, it ends up landing on the shoulders of his great nephew Octavian, who ends up being the first Roman emperor, Augustus. Okay, so we're going to have a little look at a slab of Latin here and see if A, we can translate it, and B, if we can put into practice what I've just said about translation technique. Okay, so we would look at this Latin and we would just read it. Read it through. Don't do anything else other than read it. Okay. Now I won't read it all, but it's beginning Natus est Romae Augustus AD 9 Cal. That's ante diem noem calendars that's October. In regioni Palatii sumpta virilli toga militaribus donis donatus est, quamquam non tunc belli peritus erat. Now, you can. There's almost a sense of panic when you've got a sentence where it's not easy. The heartbeat goes up a bit, and you're thinking, blimey, what is all this? But don't panic. Rule 1, don't panic. Just keep on going. So, quamquam non tunc belli peritus erat, simul atqui autem Caesarem occisum esse cognovit, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Okay, now, as you go through it, you see that there are words that are definitely Latin words. Some of them you think, whoa, I've never seen that word before, but most of them are demonstrably Latin words, and quite a lot of them are words you actually know already. So, ut, mox, reliquit, these are words you know. Cum, tandem, per, coator, annos, Reassuring is what we're looking for. We want to be reassured, and as we read it on this first occasion, we find that actually some of these words are words we know. Okay. Then we read it through again, this time just, looking a little bit at the endings. So, natus est, again, nominative, singular. Augustus, he looks nominative, singular. In regione, that's in plus a preposition, it's a preposition followed by what looks like an ablative in regione. Sumpta, really, toga, militaribus, dative and ablative plurals, ibus, those are fun. Donatus est, quamquam non tunc belli peritus erat, there's a third person singular. Simul atque autem Caesarem, that's an accusative. He might be the object, it might be indirect statement. Don't worry, you don't need to know yet what, but you're just spotting the overall shape of these sentences. Cognovit looks like a main verb. Proximas legiones, those look like accusative plurals. Instruere, that looks like a present infinitive. Constituit, third person singular, looks like the main verb. Id tamen consilium, could be anything because it's neuter. Ut audacissimum, same problem. We don't know, is that nominative or is it accusative? Mox reliquit, there's another verb, we like that. Romam que on the end of a word means and. Ut, ut is a cracking word. It can mean as, it can mean in order that, it can mean with the result that, we don't yet know, we don't yet care. Blah-de-blah-de-blah. Okay, so you're going through, you're just getting a sense of the shape of what's going on. And then on our third read-through, we're getting a little bit more of an idea of what's going on. So I'll jump a bit lower, because otherwise I'll always be doing the same stuff. In the second paragraph, you've got Caesaris et deinde Augusti cognomine e data sunt. Okay, data sunt looks like a perfect passive, they have been given, and you had a e that looks like to him. Okay, alterum, post alterum. Now, when you see alterum and alterum, you just might remember that alter is the way in Latin of saying the one this and the other that. Okay, but you might be thinking, I don't know what case we're in here. Alterum, what's that? Alter. Oh, neuter. It could be, nominative, neuter, singular, maybe, but we're not sure. So let's carry on. And then you've got this quibus dam putantibus eum romulum appellari opportere. Blimey, appellari looks like a present infinitive passive. Opportere looks like a present infinitive active. So, that's not going to be fun, I don't think. Vehementer looks like an adverb. Monuis set, there's a third person singular pluperfect subjunctive. He had warned. Who had warned? We don't know yet. Ut Augustus, there's a nominative singular. Non tantum novo sed etiam maiore cognomina vocaretur. There's a third person singular imperfect subjunctive passive. So, not only, but known, you've got non tantum sed etiam, not only this, but also that. So, a little bit of light is being thrown on the sentence structure of what's going on here. But at the end of our third reading, almost certainly, you would still be thinking, this looks like quite difficult Latin. Okay, I'm going to have to really put my mind to it to get this right. And with any luck, when we do, we will get it right. But, it's not easy. And very often, after all your hard work, trying to master this language, you get a slab of Latin and you think, blimey, it's as if what have I been doing all this time? I just don't understand this stuff. But a little bit like a difficult crossword, if you plug away at it, you just suddenly find that something begins to give, and it's like you get the first 3 letters of the word, and then there's a gap, and then there's another 2 letters, and you think, oh, I know what's going on here. Sometimes translating Latin is a bit like that. And, let's see if some of the pennies will have dropped after our various readings of this passage, and we can make progress. Hope so. Right, natus est Romae Augustus AD 9 cal oct in regioni Palatii. Okay, natus est Romae. Now, natus est, he, nominative masculine singular, was born. Natus est, he was born, Romae, at Rome. That's the locative case of Roma. It means at Rome. Looks like a genitive form. So he was born at Rome, Augustus. Now, word order, a little bit funny, but Augustus was born at Rome, AD 9 cal. So remember, these the date formats, we've done a bit of work on date formats. I can refer you back to a video where we've discussed them. But this basically means on the 9th day before the calends of October. Okay. Now remember, in Latin you count both ends. So the 9th day before the calends of October, that's the 1st of October. Well, to get that right, you need to know how many days September has. 30 days have September. Well, that's nice and easy. So September's got 30 days. Okay, so AD 9 Cal Oct is the 9th day before the calends of October. Now, we covered dates in book 2 of the course. I'll refer you back to the video on how to work it out. But what we've got here, the AD, the 9th day before the calends of October is in fact the 23rd of September. Okay, a bit of counting, you've got to kind of write it out and work out how many days there were and how many days to the 1st of the month in the next month, and kind of remember that the Romans counted both ends, so it looks like double counting, but that's how you get there. And where was he born? In Regione Palatii, in the region of the Palatine, Palatii. Okay, so that's told us what we're talking about here. We've got Augustus. He was born in Rome. We know when he was born, and we know precisely where he was born. Okay, Sumpta virili toga militaribus donis donatus est, blah, 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 blah. Now, ablative absolutes, you know, wonderful things. They're scene setters. They often come at the beginning of a sentence to set the scene. We've actually marked these vowels as long, so we know they're ablative. Sumpta virili toga. Now, with the toga having been sumpta, having been assumed, taken up, and it's the toga virili. Now, the toga virilis was the toga that a young Roman man took on to mark his coming of age. He took on the toga virilis. Now, when this had been done, so virili toga sumpta, with the toga virilis having been taken on, militaribus donis donatus est. Donatus est. He was given, he was donated militaribus donis. Militaribus donis. Military gifts, or in this case it means badges. The badges of honour, a bit like medals in modern armies. He was given the military medals or badges, which was a kind of mark of recognition of your status within the army. But this happened to Augustus kind of slightly prematurely, as it says, quamquam non tunc belli peritus erat. Although he was not then experienced in war. Belli peritus, experienced in war. Peritus followed by the genitive, what you're experienced in. Okay. Similatque autem, Caesarem occisum esse cognovit. Right. Similatque. As soon as, cognovit, he learnt, okay, main verb, Caesarem occisum esse, Caesar to have been killed. Okay, so that's an indirect statement. As soon as he learnt that Caesar had been killed, and remember, autem doesn't really mean anything, it means moreover, or however, or nothing very much at all. So, as soon as he learnt that Caesar had been killed, proximos legiones instruere constituit, he decided, instruere, to draw up proximos legiones, the nearest legions. Okay, so when he learnt that Caesar had been killed, this young man, Octavian, he thought, good idea to draw up the nearest legions. So, where are the nearest legions? I need to put myself at the head of an army. Okay. Id tamen consilium ut audacissimum mox reliquit. Right. Okay. Id tamen consilium. That plan, however, mox reliquit. He soon left or abandoned. He soon abandoned that plan, however, ut audacissimum, as, so that's ut meaning as very bold or too bold. So he soon abandoned that plan, however, as being too bold. To put himself at the head of an army would really have been a pretty kind of rash thing to do. Would have gone counter to what you're allowed to do as a Roman citizen. So he abandoned that plan. Romam que. Now, que means and. Bring it in front of the word it's stuck on the end of, and use it appropriately. So here, and, joining the two clauses, and adiit, and he went, adiit from adeo, and he went Romam, to Rome. Remember, when you go to a town or a small island, or domus or rus, you don't need a preposition. So, and he went to Rome, ut hereditatem quaereret, in order that he might seek, quaereo, in order that he might seek hereditatem, his inheritance, comma. You might have wanted a full stop there, but we haven't got one. We've got a comma, so on we go. Nolente matre. Right, now that's an ablative absolute, with his mother being unwilling, okay, not wanting this, against the wishes of his mother would be a nice way of translating that. Vitrico vero Marcio Filippo multum dissuadente. Okay, and the Abby is carrying on. And with his stepfather, Vitricus is a stepfather, and vero, that means indeed. And indeed with his stepfather, Marcius Philippus, that's the name of his stepfather, multum dissuadente, dissuading him very much, multum, a lot. So the young bloke, he was going to put himself at the head of an army. He decided that was a very rash thing to do. So then he just went to Rome to claim his inheritance, against the wishes of his mother and very much against the wishes or the advice of his stepfather. Okay. Atque ab eo tempore exercitibus comparatis primum cum blah 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 blah. Okay, so atque, and ab eo tempore, from that time, and from that time, another abi, exercitibus comparatis, with armies having been taken up, prepared, with armies having been kind of prepared or raised, you raise an army, with armies having been raised, primum cum Antonio Marco quid Lepido. So first with Marcus Antonius and Marcus Lepidus. Okay, we don't quite know what this means yet, but that's what these words mean. First with Marcus Antonius and Marcus Lepidus. Deinde, then tantum. That word can mean lots of things, but one of its key meanings is only. So then only cum Marcus Antonius, then only with Marcus Antonius, comma, tandem at last per quattuor et quadraginta annos, at last for 44 years, solus, alone, rem publicam tenuit, he held the state. Okay. So, what does that all mean? It means that from that time, this guy Octavian held the state. He controlled the state, having got his armies together first with Marcus Antonius and Marcus Lepidus in a kind of triumvirate. That was the second triumvirate. Then, having got rid of Lepidus, he held the state just with Marcus Antonius. And then, having defeated Marcus Antonius, Battle of Actium, Cleopatra, and so on, he looked after the state all on his own. Okay, for 40 years. Okay. Now, not an easy paragraph of Latin to cope with, but actually all of the little elements of it are bits you've done. You've been shown how to cope with all of those things. The difficulty is that they kind of throw it all at you all at once, and you just have to cope. Okay, we'll finish it off just because silly not to. Caesaris et dendi Augusti cognomina ei data sunt. Okay, so cognomina, that's our subject. Okay, so the surnames Caesaris of Caesar et dendi Augusti, and then of Augustus. So the surnames of Caesar and then of Augustus, ei data sunt, were given to him. Okay, his name was Octavian, but he then first became Octavian Caesar, and then Octavian Caesar was given the name Augustus. So those names were given to him. Alterum post maioris avunculi mortem. The first, so we've got alter, the one and the other. The one after the death, post mortem, after the death, maioris avunculi, of his great uncle, that's Julius Caesar. So that's when he got the surname Caesar. Alterum, the other, in other words, the name Augustus, alterum, cum Munatius Plancus, the other, when Munatius Plancus, okay, whoever he is, quibusdam putantibus eum Romulum appellare oporteri. Now, here's an Abbey, with certain people thinking, okay, now what were they thinking? We're going to go into indirect speech or indirect statement. With certain people thinking, eum, that he, in other words, Octavian, that he, oporteri, ought, appellari, to be called, right, Romulus. So he got this name of Augustus when Munatius Plancus, we don't yet know what Munatius Plancus is going to do, but we know when Munatius Plancus, then we've got the Abbey, at a time when certain people were thinking that he ought to be called Romulus. Now, what did Munatius Plancius do? Munatius Plancus, he vehementum monuesset. He very strongly warned or advised. Now, monuesset is in the pluperfect subjunctive, coming after that word cum, meaning when. Okay, when Munatius Plancius had very strongly advised. Now, what did he advise? He advised ut that Augustus, non tantum novo, sed etiam maiore cognomina vocaretur. He very strongly advised that Augustus vocaretur should be called non tantum, not only novo, with a new, sed etiam maiore, but even with a bigger or greater cognomina surname. Okay? Long-winded way of saying that Octavian first was given the surname Caesar after the death of his great uncle, And then he was given the surname Augustus, and that happened when, at a time when certain people were saying he ought to be given the name Romulus, this guy Munatius Plancus advised that he should be given not just a new name, but a greater name. And the name Augustus was the name they chose. Okay, so there we are. We got through that, just about. Bit of a struggle. Not easy, but what I hope you find, and as we go further with our studies in this wonderful, wonderful language, is if you keep your eye firmly on the rules that you've learned, agreement of nouns, agreement of a subject with the verb, clauses properly commaed off and bracketed off so that they're not muddled up with each other. Verbs in the subjunctive are in the subjunctive for a reason. What is that reason? That's why we had monuiset, because it was after cum. All of this stuff that we've learnt, it's cumulative. You can't sort of disregard any of it. And when you get stuck on something, kind of dig around until you get that, and hopefully the penny will drop and you'll say, that's why it was subjunctive. It was subjunctive after cum, meaning when, or whatever the rule is that kind of clicks into place. Okay, right, now do keep up the good work on this Latin stuff. You are pretty much equipped now to go forth into the world and cope with raw, undiluted Latin. Wish you the very, very best of luck with it all. I hope this course has been useful, and do keep checking back here in case we've popped some more videos, but it's been a pleasure and a privilege having your company over these years as we've done the 3 books, and I wish you the very, very best of luck with it all.